Life is a journey, but how you choose to show your lens and your perspective on the world, well, that is also your responsibility. Stay tuned. All about defining, finding, and maintaining joy on the journey of life. I have promised transparent and vulnerable interviews with women who are making a positive impact on the world. And today's guest is no different. I am so excited to have with us Minister Lynzey Guidry. She is a preacher, author, entrepreneur, and motivational speaker. Lynzey is blessed with numerous talents, and most meaningful is her gift and her call to preach and teach the Word of God. Reverend Lynzey's goal in all of her endeavors is to always be authentic and transparent. Reverend Lynzey, we are so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. We start every podcast by asking our guests the same question. How do you define joy? How does it show up for you?
Okay. So for me, joy is it's beyond happiness. It is this feeling of when we think about happiness, we know that that is conditional based off of what's going on in the moment. But joy for me shows up regardless of situations, regardless of how I'm feeling. It is just that feeling of hope, that feeling of being wrapped up in God's love, that feeling of knowing that whatever it is, it's going to be all right.
Excellent. And have you always had this definition of joy?
Mm-mm.
When did you come to know joy as the hope as being wrapped up in the love of God?
Oh, I would say really within the past probably year or two
Okay.
is when I got to that point.
And what has been so pivotal in the last year or two that really defined or further defined joy for you?
I hit this space of just of peace.
Mm.
Um and I had not known like peace like that in a really long time. And so yeah, I don't know really. I don't even remember the exact situation, but I remember the moment when I realized that I was just in such a peaceful space. And
Mm.
like, even though there was a bunch of stuff still going on, like, I was just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
God, it's really okay. And I fought like for years and years and years. I hit a rough patch in about 20, I guess 2018, 2019. And it just seemed like it was never ending. Every time one thing cleared up, something else popped off. And so, like, I just fought through that to maintain my sanity, to maintain some level of joy, some level of still trying to do ministry and hear God in the midst of all of
Mm-hmm.
that. But I was just riding in the car one day, and it actually I had just broken up with a boyfriend,
Okay.
and after I made that phone call and we got off the phone, I was riding and I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm really okay.
Mm.
And I started running down the list of just kind of all of what was going on for me at the moment. And I'm like, man, this is peace. And I love it here. And so I've been like trying to just make sure that I maintain this space. And I realized also that for me, peace is not the fact that there is nothing going on. It's not that chaos does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that I am maintaining my composure and maintaining my trust in God throughout that chaos.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good that it is your peace was wrapped around your trust in God and who God has revealed Himself to be, especially in a place of a breakup. I know so many of us have been there where you're like, I know this is the right decision. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. But it's still, you have that, like this lurking thought in the back of your head is, am I making the right decision?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so grateful that God gave you peace in the midst of that to know God got me. God got me
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the situation. So I want to shift because I have been looking forward to this conversation for over a week.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all, y'all know by now I stalk my guest. And in part of our prep conversation, last week or so, she said something to me that I have been sitting in. Can you share, been sitting in and wrestling with, to be honest with you?
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with the audience why you believe this is your yes to God season?
Whew, okay. Mainly because I realized that I have been in a half yes season for so long. And so Friday, last week, we had our church block party. Did you go? Okay. But yeah, so on the way to the block party, and one of my best friends and I, we always end up talking to each other on the way to church.
Okay.
I don't know how that's become our thing, but whether it's a Sunday or Wednesday, whatever. So we were talking to each other on the way, and I was sharing with him some great news, and so we were debriefing that. And he was like, something that I have come to realize as of recently, because he's just had like some amazing things happen for him too. And he was like, God has really been blessing me, blessing us. Like we keep talking about, like God did this and God did that. And we also we'll share with each other when we've had some kind of little moment of weakness or a moment where we like, what, like our thing is, what, friend, we really just be doing stuff. I know God tired of us, like just be doing stuff. And so he was like, I realized, like, we always talk about how we just be doing stuff, but like even in the midst of that, God is really blessing us and doing amazing things for us. And I was sitting there thinking, what if he's doing all of this with our half a yes and us kind of just like playing around and not for real being sold out, what would it look like? What would God do for us, in us, through us, if we gave him our full yes and if we really went all in with this? And I'm like, you know what? That's good. And I said that's crazy because I just had this thought with my Monday prayer group. We just had the similar conversation. You bring this up on Friday, and he was like, we're content with all the stuff that God is doing for us right now, but good enough for us is not God's, period. And I was like, boy, I'm about to pull over. But man, and so that has just been with me since he said that. Even at the picnic, like I had a little moment where I had to kind of like just go off to myself and just kind of just sit and reflect and just wallow. And I came to that because I just saw how grand of an affair everything that we do at Wheeler is grand, but that was just so I knew it was gonna be a lot, but I didn't know it was gonna be what it was. And so I'm just like, I'm always talking about how we do stuff with a level of excellence and a level of grandeur and just like all of this and reflecting on the fact that we just lost our founder. And so I'm like, this is really all because of this one man's yes. And him making the decision to be sold out and to just, even when he didn't want to do it, like to just do it anyway. And we are standing here in the midst of this church parking lot with all of this stuff. I was by the little stilt man, and I'm like, I'm literally walking next to a man on stilts on a Friday night.
And did.
Looking at people zip line and ride a Ferris wheel in the church parking lot.
The Ferris wheel.
Because one man said yes to God. And like, we see all of this. And so that even kind of, that drove it home even more, was to walk up on our church campus and to see all that God has blessed us with and all that God has done. And so, yeah, so it's just been in it. And even before that, when we lost Pastor Lawson, I and everybody kind of shared, their legacy or his legacy for them and how he is like really resonated with them and how the things that he's done. And the thing that of course we know him as a civil rights leader. We know him as this great preacher. We know him as Houston's pastor, the Pope, all of that, right? But the thing that resonates with me in this season, especially in my moving from a half yes to a full yes season, is the fact that and I found this out mostly when I saw the play, the Lawson Letters. He didn't really want to do any of this stuff. Like, he didn't want to be the pastor. He didn't want to go be a civil rights leader. He did this because he wanted to make sure that his students were protected. But in all of the things he didn't want to do, he did it anyway. And look
Yeah.
at what God did.
Yeah.
And so that is what really started me. And then the conversation with my friend, like that just kind of pushed it on in. So I've been in a space lately, a weird space, but a good space.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, God, I don't know what this about to be, but okay,
Yeah.
I got you. Alrighty.
I love that. I love that for so many reasons because in the season specifically, I was also impacted by Reverend Lawson's life because when you heard story after story after story, I was like, man, funerals always get me to thinking about end of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that people will be able to say about me? What will the impact
Mm-hmm.
will I matter? And it's so much that we have power of that God gives us, and He grants us as we say yes to Him. He just continues to open
Mm-hmm.
doors and windows and tables and speak our names in rooms that we're not even
Mm-hmm.
in. And I was walked away going, I'm not doing enough. And then when I talked to you and you said, if God is doing this much with half a yes, how much more
Mm-hmm.
can He do with a full yes? I
Mm-hmm.
was like, Lord, give me the courage
Mm-hmm.
to say yes to every opportunity that you've granted, knowing, believing that even in my doubt, you'll hold my hand. Even in my
Mm-hmm.
fear, you will still remind me that you are God with me. So I want to thank you for continuing to extend that lesson. Thank you for your transparency and even sharing with your friend your story.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to have good friends to share honestly and transparently with, and then to receive their feedback? How important is that?
For me, it's super important. I am somebody who I know my weaknesses and I know that I need accountability.
Mm.
And so it's always been super important for me to surround myself with people who aren't like my yes men, who will offer whatever criticisms or who will check me when I need to be checked, who will say, girl, get up and do what you need to do. So that's always been a big deal for me. But in this season of life of doing ministry and of trying to like go after all these different things, I've realized even more how important it is because not only do I need people to be able to check me when I need to be checked or
Mm-hmm.
tell me when I'm wrong, but I also need people to be able to bounce these ideas off of or to just go and vent to and to let them know, hey, I got this going on, I need you to pray with me, and
Mm-hmm.
know that they're gonna pray for me or drop what they're doing and
Yeah.
pray for me right there in that moment, or just allow me the safe space to say what I need to say, to process how I need to process, to sit with me in silence
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case. But my friendships are very important to me. And I just shared with another friend, I was like, you know what? I realized, like, at one point, I realized that everybody that I called a best friend,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really, our relationships kind of shifted. And not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what I realized is that I don't have one, like, all purpose best friend. I have very good friends and very meaningful friendships for all the different areas and spaces that I need them in my
Mm.
life. And I've realized as I've gotten older, like that's more important for me than having like one person for everything. I've
Mm-hmm.
got my prayer group friends. I've got my 20 plus year friends.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my friends that I'm going to like just really clown and bear all and cut the food with.
Yeah.
And, know that like I'm good. I'm in safe space. But that same group of friends also,
Mm-hmm.
when we need to pray heaven down, we going to do that too.
Amen.
I've got my friends, my ministry friends. I've got my friends that, girl, okay, I need to put this outfit together. So how we going? And so
Cause sis is cute, y'all.
all of those friend groups are super important to me. I've got my clergy women group friends. Like and I love them all, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all super close. We all have, of course, we have all of our insiders and whatnot, but we all serve just, amazing purpose in each other's lives. So,
Thank
yeah.
you so much. That's so important. Friendship and mentorship, even throughout, in order for us to continue to grow and grow stronger and grow stronger together. That's so important. And I'm grateful for my friends and family that have been so supportive of every venture, whether I believed in it or not. They were like, yeah, we doing? Okay, well, that's what we're going to do. And so I want to share this podcast was birthed as a God assignment when I turned 40. And your ministry through my lens was birthed on or around your 29th birthday. So can you share the purpose of the name or the intention behind your name and then the intention of your ministry?
Okay. So it was birthed, my 29th birthday. That was a really hard year for me. And on Facebook, we like to post our little picture and put our birthday reflection for the year. This year was such and such and such and such. And I started writing that stuff, and I'm like, I'm lying. And I deleted the whole paragraph. And I was real about it. I was like, this year sucked. It was hard. I dealt with this. I dealt with that. This is still going on. None of this stuff has a resolve. But I'm hopeful. But I know that, God has always brought me through. God has never left me. Like, it was just, and so for me, who always seems so put together and polished, and my social media family know me to be one way, so I got a lot of support with that when I posted the status. People who I never would have thought that this resonated with commented or messaged and was like, girl, I'm going through the same thing or dealing with the same thing, or I'm in the same space. And so I didn't realize just, number one, how many people were in that space, and how many people needed to hear that, but also just the spectrum of people that it resonated with. And I'm like, you know what? Okay. And I had been hearing, probably for the last year or two, one of my mentors, Dr. Christian Guillory, she would always say, she calls me Pose because she likes the way that I pose in my pictures.
Oh, I like it. That's cute.
She would call me Pose. And so she just shared with me, she was like, you are an amazing storyteller. You're a very gifted speaker, a very gifted preacher. She said, but you lack vulnerability. She said, you're transparent. She said, but people want, in what you're doing and what God is calling you to do, you have to display a level of vulnerability. And I thought by me telling all my business to these people on Facebook every few days or so that I was and she was like, no, there's a difference. And I'm like, okay. And so that was my vulnerable moment. And so, after I got all of that outpouring, I remembered the stuff that she said. I was like, okay, this is what she's talking about, thinking about. And I've been thinking about putting my experiences, putting them out there outside of just, posting a status here and there when something happens. And so I'm like, okay. So I started through my lens. It was just a Facebook Live series of me chronicling through all of the things that brought me up to that point and to that moment. Some of them I, overcame. Some of them I was still kind of thinking through and going through. And so that's what happened. I started my first one talking about a really bad breakup. And that real bad breakup is what seemed like it started that little series of unfortunate events. I call it the fallout. That whole little period of my life when everything was just kind of, I just refer to that now as the fallout. And so I started with that, and that ended up turning into a 3 or 4 part series about relationships.
Okay.
And so I had one where the girls, I had girlfriends come on, one I had guy friends come on, one we were all together, and then the next one was I had a friend of mine who's a relationship therapist.
Okay.
And so she came. And we just kind of talked about, how to bridge all of what was said, how to fix what was said, and it was called This Dating Pool Has Pee in It. And that last part was called Filtering Out the Pee.
Well, the truth is, okay?
Might be a little fecal matter in there too, I'm just saying.
is, okay?
If we being honest, if you know, so yeah. Um, and so I did a few different of those. I
Mm-hmm.
talked about one was like what I experienced kind of when I first accepted my calling, how
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through this journey of trying to find myself and my identity and my place in ministry. And I will say this, I have not been as consistent with doing through my lenses as I should. Like, I'll go strong with them for a few episodes and then I'll just kind of stop. Then I'll pick it back up and kind of stop. And so I ain't gonna lie, when you called me about this podcast, it did convict me.
Okay.
So okay. But yeah, and so it's just been all my little life lessons. And so my unofficial motto
Mm-hmm.
for Through My Lens is I don't want none of my, and I spell it I don't want none of my experiences to go to waste.
Oh.
Like, nothing that God has brought me through is for no reason. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody needs it. Somebody's got to hear it. So that is how we got through my lens.
Oh God, thank
Mm-hmm.
you. There's a minister, and I'm trying to get who has said it, and I believe it's Reverend Lynzey has said, God doesn't do one thing for one thing. It is always a reason to help you and someone
Mm-hmm.
else to come through it. So I want to thank you for being transparent and
Mm-hmm.
thank you for being vulnerable, and then being honest about conviction as well. I think as we are building the body, there's so many times where we see somebody doing something, we're like, oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. Like, oh, but I should also. And it's not a comparison, but again, it goes
Mm-hmm.
back to that accountability and knowing God doesn't do one thing for just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you spoke about being authentic. How did you get to a place that you were comfortable with you to share what was going on with you?
Hmm. Okay, so I'll walk quickly through that journey of how.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in college, that was when I accepted my call to ministry. And so I grew up in a very loving, laid back church. They allowed us kids to be kids, to explore our faith. They were more like facilitators in our faith journeys, more than just saying, you need to believe this, and you need to wear
Mm-hmm.
this, and you need to do this. I had really amazing youth leaders, even the older people in the church. They were just very loving, nurturing, all that stuff. So I thought that, that's
Everybody.
what, yeah, I thought that that's what it was. Not only that, but like, so the pastor, when I was leaving, she was a woman. The bishop at the time was a woman. The district superintendent at the time, it was a
Mm-hmm.
Methodist church, United Methodist, was a woman also. So I've never not seen women in ministry either.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, my little naive self is thinking that, this is how church is everywhere. And so I get to college. Wasn't thinking about a call to ministry. Was trying to be out there living my best life and doing my own thing. And so I end up getting caught up with the campus ministry group there, and that was totally by accident. And so most of these people are like Pentecostal, they are traditional Baptists, and so that was a different world for me.
Okay.
And so I get there. I ended up accepting my calling. That was like around September, October-ish when I accepted my calling. And I let our chaplain know, and she was a woman as well. She was United Methodist, a woman. And I accepted my calling after walking in on a conversation in her office. The guys were arguing about like how women shouldn't pastor and don't
Mm.
need to be preaching, this and that. They are in this lady's office.
The nerve.
Having this conversation. So she just sitting there at her computer. She
Mm-hmm.
ain't said a word. So the next day I'm in there, I'm looking for my friends, and they weren't there. And so I was just sitting there. I don't know what made me just stay there. And so I finally just told her, I was like, I think that, I'm being called to ministry. And so we talked through that, and we have been like this ever since
Mm.
then. And that's been 2014. And so she's just really been a very nurturing presence in my ministry journey, my voice of reason all the time. But so being around them, of course, the idea of how women should present themselves, how you're supposed to look when you go to church, how you're supposed to preach, how you're supposed to do this. I changed all of who I was and what I knew to fit that mold of what, because at the time I was at school more than I was at Wheeler, right?
Okay.
And so I was just kind of doing, these are all people who are young preachers, 19 to 25, whatever. And so this is my crew, these are my people, and they are the ones who were kind of like teaching me how to navigate this. And they just really made me feel like what I was doing was wrong. And because that's most of what I was seeing was like traditional Baptist and Pentecostal and all of that, I'm like, okay. So I switched it up like all the way. Like, oh my gosh. I have one picture that I post every now and then on Facebook of me with this big god awful church hat on. And a suit. And I'm like, this is, like I was doing it. We had one church that we would go to out there. You couldn't wear pants, couldn't wear makeup. I'm walking around there barefaced trying to go to church and stuff, knowing I like me a little,
a little razzle-dazzle.
Not too much, just a little something, And so I go through that and I do all of that and I graduate. So I do that for them 4 years. And
what school?
Graduate Wiley College.
Okay.
And so Wiley University now, excuse me, let me fix that. Yes. And so so I graduate, I am back home, and I'm back out into the real world, and I don't have all of these people around me and in my ear anymore. And now I'm back around people who are more like what I was going into college. And I'm having this struggle and this identity crisis of, okay, so how do I, like, what am I supposed to do? How do I present? I'm going back and forth between trying to be this, traditional church girl. But then, when I'm here with these people, I want to be, like laid back. I might put on, little ripped jeans, little heels, little blazers, something like that, and kind of. And so it was just really, it was tough. It was tough. Even with how I was preaching, like I had a real issue with the way that I preached. Cause I wasn't like, I'm not a hooper. I'm not gonna give you all that. I like it. I like to hear other people do it, but it's not me. And so I felt inadequate. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like, you know what, this is never really gonna take off for me. And so I ended up going to Metamorphosis at Fountain of Praise one year.
Okay.
And the chaplain who came in after the chaplain that I told you about earlier. So she was there my senior year with me. And so we were there, and Elaine Flake preached a message. Like, when I say had everybody just laid out on the floor. And so she comes to me and she finds me. And so she's praying with me. And she was just like, God really wants you to just do you. Like you. You are enough just the way that you are. Just the way that God gives this stuff to you is how he wants you to present it. Don't try to change it. Don't try to fit a mold. She was like, truth be told, the people who put these things in your head, they not doing the stuff that you were doing. I was in seminary at the time. All of them had flunked out or weren't going anymore. And she was like, these people aren't even doing what you're doing and not called to the same people that you're called to. Like, the people that you were called to are the people who need it, just like you
good.
are. And so that was like the first little step of just kind of setting me free. And so, of course, it didn't happen all in that moment. But when I had these moments of like wrestling with my identity and how I present myself, I would always go back to that day when she prayed for me and when she talked to me. And so that is what I held on to, is I just kind of kept going. And then it was really helpful that Sarah Jakes started getting popular on social media. And I'm like, okay, so, this is more my speaker. She cute. She always cute. And she always,
she fly. She stay fly.
Very fly. It was her. It was somebody else. And I don't really see or hear from her that much. But like then, for a second when Stephanie Joy came to Wheeler, I met her like, so I went to go do an internship in Dallas. She was coming to do her internship at Wheeler. And so we were coming in and out at opposite times, but a friend of mine connected us. And so when I made it back home, we would hang out, we would talk, and I saw, same
Mm-hmm.
thing with Stephanie or whatever. The way that she, presents herself, she is
Absolutely.
still very down home New York girl.
Mm-hmm.
And, she gonna give it to you how she give it to you. And so that was another, like, to see that with someone who I, talk to on the regular
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So that was helpful for me as well. And so it's just really been that whole thing of I needed to hear it first. I needed to hold on to it, and then I needed to see it that it can be done. But also to constantly get the affirmation from the people that I minister to and that I serve, and I'm like, okay, God, I hear you, and I see how this all came together. I hate that I had to go this route,
Mm-hmm.
and that it took such a long time for me to get here, but I got it. Like, this is enough and I'm enough, and how I show up is how I show up, and that's really okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good and such an important lesson. Whether you're in ministry, whether you're in education, no matter what your field is, where God has placed you is where He has called you
Mm-hmm.
to be, as you are. And of course, we're all learning, evolving, and growing. But at the root of it, who He has called us to be, we are already
Mm-hmm.
good. As I want to thank you so much for sharing your journey, for sharing your story of one being honest, right? And allowing Reverend Flake and your other leaders to see you
Mm-hmm.
in that space where you like, I know I'm not doing what I'm not showing up as I want to,
Mm-hmm.
as I truly am. But thank you for praying for me. And then from that, being able to garner strength from seeing women who were just being who they were,
Mm-hmm.
still preaching and preaching with authority.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing. You also wrote a book
Mm-hmm.
called The Limit Does Not Exist, 21 Days of Overcoming the Boundaries That Fear and Self-Doubt Create. Was this rooted from your experience?
Yes, it was. So the book, first of all, was a long time coming.
Okay.
Um, I just started randomly writing one day. I wrote like two of the devotionals, and I didn't even know why I wrote that. And so a friend of mine, we were on the phone, and some I don't remember, were we watching Mean Girls or was I quoting Mean Girls? I don't even remember. But I said the limit does not exist, and so he was like, "Oh, that's your book title right there." Didn't even know I was writing a book. He said that, and I'm like, "What?" And so I made a note of it. When, like, certain people in my life, when they say things, I make notes of
Mm-hmm.
it and just keep it on my phone, and because at some point I know I'm gonna need it. If it resonates with me, I'm gonna make a note of it. And so I wrote it down, and again, didn't know I was writing a book. And one of the days, this was still like during the time of the fallout, and so I got so mad at God one day,
Mm.
and I was just like over it. But instead of me indulging
Mm-hmm.
in some of the self destructive practices that I pick up sometimes, I started writing,
Okay.
and I cranked out like 3 or 4 more devotionals that day, just mad and fuming and writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, we getting somewhere. And so I ended up, that was like, at that point I had like 5 of these, and so I just started writing down a scripture list of what scriptures came to mind when I thought about like overcoming fear and overcoming self-doubt. I'm like, okay, we this is obviously this is something.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote out a list of scriptures. I ended up with 21 of them. And I'm like, okay, so this is, like, this is the devotional. And so I just picked it up over the course. I probably wrote this over like 3 or 4 years. Anytime I thought about picking it back up,
Mm-hmm.
or even revisiting the old ones that I had written before and going and revising those. So when I got for real serious about it,
Not for real, for real.
I was like, okay, I'm going to do, like, I need to do at least one of these a day.
Okay.
And so I went on and finished up what I had, sent it to 2 of my friends to edit for me. I reached out to another friend who at the time was making planners and journals,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, I need you to design this for me. And so she designed the journal part for me. Then I went and made like an ebook version of it based
Okay.
off of what she did. And I sat there and I did it. It took, once I got serious, it took me about a month to
Okay.
finish the writing and to go ahead and like do all the formatting and all of that. And I got up one day and I'm like, you know what? I'm finna go ahead and like put this on Amazon. I'm finna publish this today because I was trying to, like sitting on it still like, I don't know. And I'm like, nope, today, let's go ahead. And I just put it up there and I submitted it. And it has been, so the journal was definitely a step of me overcoming my own fear and self-doubt. Um, and so it a lot of my stories are in there. It is a very personal project. I talk about some of my time at Wiley. I share a little bit of this journey of me trying to like, find myself and
Mm-hmm.
how those unrealistic expectations really were placed on me when I first started ministry. I talk about that in there. I talk about my relationship with my granddad. Like most of the days, the devotional days are my own stories that kind of go along with whatever the scripture lesson is for the day. But it was a labor of love. It was like some days I wrote. It was very therapeutic. Some days I was writing and crying. Other days I was sitting there like, man, I'm writing a book. Other days I would have a page of stuff and I'm like, where did this come from? And so it was an amazing process. It was an amazing journey. I am actually in the process of doing a revised version
Come
of
on,
it.
revised version.
And I'm gonna put it out again. And so before the summer is out, before I go back to school,
Okay.
the new revised. I'm talking about the new revised version, like it's the
Like the
Bible.
Bible, but okay.
The revised version, second edition, will go out as well.
Excellent. So I do want to ask, what are one or two tips that you can share that you have experienced that have helped you overcome doubt and fear?
The biggest thing I think has been just knowing that whatever God calls you to do, God is going to also equip you to do those things. Very rarely does God give us something that we say, "Oh, I could do that." It doesn't happen that way. And so if God is calling you to it, God is gonna make sure that He gets it done. Just by virtue of the fact that God will not leave things undone. If as long as He's putting His name on it and putting His stamp on it, guess what? It's gotta happen. He gonna see it through because why not? Why not? And if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. Which brings me to my second. I went to Israel with my seminary group, and so we were at this one church. I think it was the church, so all the different little holy sites, there's a church there. And so this one was, I think, at Mary Magdalene's home, or it was either Mary Magdalene or Mary, the mother of Jesus. It was one of the Marys, but it was her home. And so there's this church there, and it's got amazing acoustics. And so everybody was kind of in our group. They were just like randomly singing songs just so we could hear the acoustics and stuff. And so our group started singing, and everybody in the church joined along with us. And so then somebody else would sing a song, and they would join, and we just kept singing these hymns. And like it was so strong on me to sing it as well. And I just did not. I was so scared. I was like, no, God, I can't sing. Now stop playing. And so I was like, no, like I just, no. And so I ended up getting up, walking out. No sooner than I hit that door, hadn't even put both feet over the threshold yet, I hear someone singing it as well.
Mm.
It's one of my classmates. She's standing at the altar back to everybody, and it is one of the most beautiful sounds I've ever heard. So she's just standing there singing as if nobody else is in that church with her. And everybody else is just quiet. And so I step outside and I literally heard God say, "Stop playing with me. Because if you don't do what I asked you to do, I'll get somebody else to do it." And so that, oof, that scared me straight for a little minute. And I'm like, okay. And so I started when I felt God telling me to do something or wanting me to get something done. I would start the process. This is where my half yes comes in, where we talked about that earlier. I'll start the process. I'll, start doing it, start working through it, working the logistics. But I would never quite get to the execution piece of it. Or it would take me a long time to get to the execution piece. But, for me, all right, God, you see I'm doing it. Like what's the problem? Because half obedience is still disobedience, right? And so, so that would be my second tip. Do it, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And that is I've had that happen to me a few times where I didn't do it or I took too long to act up on it. And then I see that same idea, somebody else is doing it. And I'm like, I wouldn't even do it like that. Or that's not even like what I would do, or not as good as what I would do. And God, like, it don't matter because you didn't do it.
It's getting done.
It's getting done.
Yeah.
So I'm in one of them spaces right now. And so I'm like, okay, all right. So.
Oh, that is good. God does not leave anything undone. Y'all. Sis, thank you for coming by here and preaching to my spirit. I tell people all the time, most of the time, I do this podcast for me. Because God, I just believe it to be so. He orchestrates everything so perfectly that it's the right person at the right time for what I need to hear from me. And so I really thank you. That last one, if you don't do it, somebody else will, because God is a God of order and a God of structure, and he does bring everything to completion. So thank you. Whew. You said that I had convicted you. You have convicted me. And I want to thank you so much, so much, that I can't wait to hear. We've already heard, releasing this summer, the second edition of Overcoming the Limit Does Not Exist, 21 Days of Overcoming the Boundaries That Fear and Self-Doubt Create. We already heard that. But now, looking even further into the future, God willing, would you dare share your hopes and your prayers to God for yourself over the next 5 years?
Yeah. Next 5 years, I am currently working on my D-Man.
Come on.
And so I want for my D-Man project to, and I have not thought it all the way through. But I have this, my heart is inclined towards people who have dealt with church hurt, like the real kind. Not like they ain't let me sing my solo or like somebody made me move out of my seat. Not that kind. I mean like who have dealt with real issues, real trauma in the church, who have experienced manipulation from their, leaders, or who have experienced just this isolation from the people within the church, and who they still love Jesus, but they like, I don't really, I don't really fool with these people like this. I don't want to do this. I watch church online on my way to brunch, but I'm not gonna go because I don't have time to deal with that. And so, I want to really go through and unpack whatever that trauma is, and minister to them, to that particular space that they're in, but then also help them to get back into healthy church environments, and to recognize when that manipulation is happening, or to recognize whatever the situation is that kind of got them into that space, to be able to recognize it and deal with it in a healthy way. To retreat if they need to retreat, or to stand up and say what needs to be said, versus feeling like, oh, I'll just sit there and take it, or they don't really mean it in the way that they say it, So that is my D-Man project. But I am also working with a friend of mine who is a therapist, and I'm trying to also build my arsenal of mental health professionals, because I love Jesus. I do. I love the church. I do. I love to praise. I love to worship. I love to pray. However, mental illness is very, very real.
Absolutely.
And so I am working also to build just that bridge between the spiritual and the mental, to see how these things are working together. And I don't necessarily want to go back for a clinical degree. It's not in the cards for me.
Okay.
It can be, but I don't want to. And so I am trying to figure out, and I know God is going, because already little things are coming together, but just trying to realize and recognize how I can sit in both spaces and be effective in both spaces. And then I am working on a children's book.
Aww.
It is a book of affirmations for children of color, and it's called Black Kid Magic. So I am working on that. That shall be out before the year is over with as well. So those are kind of my 3 major projects right now.
Oh man, so needed, so needed. How can someone get in touch with you if they wanted to get more information about your Monday prayer group, if they want to stay engaged for when you release the 2nd edition? How can they get in touch with you?
Okay, so I am on Instagram at through.my.lens, but it's Lynz, like my name. I'm on Facebook, Lynzey Guidry, Lynzey. Guidry is Guidry. And also my website is www.lynzeyguidry.com.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to link all of that in the description of the podcast and of the episode. Sis, thank you so much for coming this way, for sharing your wisdom, for being vulnerable and transparent. We have been made the better, and we have been challenged, y'all. Yes, we've been challenged to what it means to give God your full yes.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It is my honor.
I loved it.
Yay, I'm so excited. Y'all, have you subscribed to the channel? If you have, thank you. If you haven't, what you doing? Amen. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Share the podcast. I am sure I have been blessed, and I hope that you have also been blessed, because Sister came our way and was so vulnerable with us. We will air every single Thursday, but until we meet again, may God increase your joy, grant you strength for the journey, and give you the courage to tell your story. Bye, friends.